All right. But without further ado, because he, as much as I do, likes to talk about himself. So I'll let you take over from this, Yvok, but we do appreciate you being here. And thank you all for being here as well.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, really. You filled that space along with trying to put all those adjectives for me, but thank you for that. So sorry for that technical elements, always happens. We'll not worry about that as going forward. Once again, my name is Jeevak, Jeevak, as it says, I think over there. I am myself a industrial designer, a product designer. There are a couple of other things too, but I would say I'm happy to be a designer. Just about myself, I love mountain biking, predominantly downhill as much as I can when I find some time. And I love kickboxing too as my, I would say, activity or workout. Not fighting, fitness kickboxing. So do not come back me and challenge me to a duel or something. But I think it's a pretty nice, cozy crowd. Let's try to make it as engaging as possible. I will really, really encourage that. Finally, we have some amazing white markers. We have a whiteboard or a transparent board. We can get your questions over there. And we can talk about product, design, brand, strategy, business. This is a startup conference. So maybe by the show of hands, who has an idea eventually they want to make it happen? Hopefully, wow, that's good. 30%, 35%. That's pretty interesting. I think no matter what, even if you did not raise your hand, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you any difficult questions. But as we go forward, and maybe we can spend more time about that, nice to have always multiple ideas in the hopper, multiple sources of income. So however small, however bigger idea it is, I think it will be nice to look at them from the maturity point of view. So we can talk about that too. Before we even start going forward, I think I'm here for yesterday and today also. I'm trying to ground myself with the needs and anticipations of the audience. Do you want to throw, if anybody wants to raise their hand and just throw some questions that bothering them for some time? It might be, again, about the similar topics we are talking about. Emotional design, product design, brand, consumer, empathy. Any questions? We can just start with some questions. We'll try to maybe plot them on the board, and then we'll try to answer them as we go forward. I have one hand over there, one hand over here. After you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the title of this chat is what drew me in, right? I've always been a believer that people buy emotionally and justify logically.
Perfect.
So connecting that to a brand, I'm just fascinated. I guess my question is, how do you see that, right? How do you connect?
That's perfect. Hopefully we should be trying to talk about this or around this all the next 1 hour or so. We had one more hand over here, Tara. No? Oh, you had it. Don't be shy. No. Okay, that's good. We can all, whenever you want to get up, stretch, get a cup of coffee for you, for me, perfectly okay. Yourself.
I was just wondering how much of a background do you feel like you need to have in user experience design to become a product designer, or how are those?
That's pretty interesting. How much background do you need to be, let's say, a educated or maybe a formalized kind of an course of action to be and start designing? Yeah. So I myself am educated in that particular world, so I might be biased. But if you don't have to go to a big university, if you have enough experience in doing, and I would say learning from it, it should be okay. Experience counts. It might stem from 4-year kind of an graduate course, or it might be 10 years from working with somebody and really absorbing it. So I would go either or. Again, depends on what you want to do. You want to do it for yourself. You might not need a title. If you want to work for a big corporation, no good, bad. Otherwise, you might always nice to have a title. Title doesn't mean anything, but maybe it means for some people too. That's actually a beautiful question. I like this. After you, and then it will be you, yourself.
I'm curious in learning how I can use emotional design as a service provider, where it's photography, so it's a pretty emotional service. But I'm a self-taught photographer. I didn't go to school for it, so the design side of things is pretty easy.
Nice. What's your name?
Gabby.
Gabby. So again, a disclaimer. So we will talk about product design today, or gadget design, or artifact design. It applies to everything. Any product, any equipment, any utensil, any implement, any service, any app, any photography element too. So emotionality is what makes us human. So it will be hard not to be human, not to be emotionally connected. So no matter what, it should be applicable to what you do. We as a studio also involve a lot in the service design. Second last question.
All right. What is the difference in logo design between marketing for a company, product, and a person?
That's pretty interesting. And maybe we might or might not touch upon this because it's a very specific element of logo design. In fact, I might make a statement right now. So when we talk about brand, and still so much people understand about brand, I think some people, I'm not pointing fingers at you, some people who might not in this room might think about logo slapping or putting a sticker on it might be a brand. So we all understand that's not the case. But we'll try to come back again and try to see how to make sure we brand appropriately. What you say is really good. Understanding the target customer or consumer. It might be one-on-one, it might be one-to-many, or it might be many-to-many. So I think we talked about design. I am a designer, so I was born out of, everybody here is an artist. That's who we are. But I would say that how I would qualify of being a designer because I'm going to design it for people. I'm not going to design it for myself. Let's say you go and buy a painting of Pablo Picasso. He does an amazing sketch. You buy him because it is his self-expression, and that becomes art, and that's good. If you might buy it because he likes it, or you might buy it because you like it. If a designer will come in place in making sure it's not what I do, I'm going to go ahead of some slides, it's what my constituency wants. If the constituency is only one, that's okay, or maybe 100, or maybe millions. So it all depends on whom we are designing for. That will be the way I will look at it. So one-on-one is pretty good too. If you're an architect, you're going to design a residential house for a couple, it's just for them. You should not be worried about the second or the third owners as such. So it's pretty interesting to look at that. That was the second last question. I already made room for one more. Anybody going? Awesome.
You know, a lot of conversations where brands that sell products are the first step at the forefront.
Maybe I'm hard at hearing. I'll just come over there.
A lot of brand conversations talk about brands that sell products. I'm also wondering if brands that sell experiences fit on the free experiences, have a different approach to emotional connection.
Beautiful, Jess. Means, again, just as I think I was talking with Gabby, the emotional connection. When you say about emotionality, it's predominantly aspirational state, your experiential state, or your emotional state. So in a way, all three are not that different from each other. I'm sorry, Adam, I should be with my mic over here. So the question was about how to make, or about experiential state rather than a product state or a service state or a software state. I think all of those together eventually constitute to be an experience. And we will try to decode a little bit about that. But that is a very loaded question. It will be, after my time is over, we can spend the entire evening on that. I will love to talk more about that. Great question and great engagement. Same like this, as we are going forward, raise your hand, challenge me, talk something else. If you, 30% raised their hands, if you want to talk about what you are doing, I can use those examples to state something over here rather than using some esoteric example. So if you want, you're doing a bicycle design or another gadget design, let me know, take out the name and we can just talk about that. So I work with Human. We are a design and a brand consultancy. So we offer services to clients to help design their solutions. It might be, again, a constitution of products or service or experiences too. So even though as a consultancy or anybody like you who might be in design, including you will always start with robust research. Then eventually it will go into design. Design can be packaging design, UI design, product design, a range of them. And then making sure the similar intention is passed on into your brand asset and brand content to make sure the impression is reached out to the constituency. But today we will try to a little bit more focus on the design aspect of it. And for that, I think we might try to go with just a 1 minute video, at least to show typically what we do. That's okay. We'll try to use our mic over here. This will be a little bit more focused on design. I think that's what the audio we will get right now, don't worry. So we have different, predominant three buckets. I said this will be more about design. So when you talk about design, it's easy to talk about something that's physical and tangible. But believe me, the same processes, the same methodology, we use it on any other medium. It can be an app, it can be a storytelling element, it can be anything else. Use a similar methodology. Some of the work that we do for clients, the speaker, that speaker also is designed by us eons ago, including to other things, speakers, like it's a black box, and we can talk about case study, which will be talking more detail about that. But the actual act of making it happen. You are all startups or entrepreneurs, eventually we're going to build a business. One of the most cornerstone is exactly what is your solution. If the product happens to be over there, we typically help in designing that. We work with big clients. We might not be talking about that right now, but especially it makes sense. We also work for startups. It might be pre-seed, it might be stage A, stage B. We love to work with startups, and that's one of the reason I am also over here in Denver to understand that constituency, those needs, what else we might need to do to change our offerings. And before we go into any specific case studies or the topic of elements, final thing is like why even to listen to me or to human? Sometimes it all comes down to third-party verification, winning awards. If you really understand the value of it, it might be IF award or Red Dot award or CS awards. It tells a lot about how people are eventually going to embrace it or eventually going to use it and make it more memorable. So that's enough about me. Coming back to the actual, I would say, element in hand, creating emotional bonds between brands and consumers. It's a pretty, I would say, mouthful, pretty long title, but we'll try to a little bit focus on these three elements at least to start with, and then try to see through a case study which of them might be more apparent. The emotion, the bonds, the brands, what you stand for, not necessarily the product. Product becomes a slice of your brand, which is still not a logo, and then eventually making sure it is designed for an end user. We have to define exactly who that person or that demographic is. It is, again, what I'm doing is, or we are doing is not rocket science. It is just very comprehensive application of the structure of how you're going to approach a problem, any problem, absolutely any problem. I think you mentioned Don Normal and his everyday book is understanding those root causes and plus many more to make sure not only those are solved, but something else, anticipation of something else that also can be solved. So why emotion? Means emotion, we are not going to define emotion right now. We should be knowing what it is. But why are we even bothering about that? We have to understand that any product you do, it might be a toaster, a lawnmower, an app, a hat design, a coffee cup design, it is going to evoke an emotional response. We are the custodians of that product. We should be curating the intentional way it's going to be responded to. If we do not create that positive response, hopefully positive, or the correct one or the proper one, the end user is going to constitute something and do something which might not be on your brand. And that's the main reason where we have to make sure to see what it triggers. Next part is again the brand and why brands. It's a pretty big topic. We're not going to slice every part of it. And there is different ways to define brand too. We can come over there, maybe in more Q&A. But the element is to make sure we have to understand people are still never going to buy your product. However, the amazing idea it might be, if we want to really go and talk about impact of business, and we're talking about successful business, it will always be, we have to make sure we capture that equity in the brand itself, because that's what eventually will be valued more, not only by your investment community, but also by the end users too. So that's the reason we have to make sure we are building that and we are understanding what attributes we work with for the brand. And the last one is, I think, as we recently just mentioned about that, is designer is not the user. You might be one of the super user, but you should not be at the center of the constituency you're working for. It is very easy to fabricate something for you and try to see how it might, let's say, hopefully be on the path for success. It would be, but it might not reach to the level of where it finally can be sold. No matter what, sales pipeline is the main pipeline, however you cut that. Sales will define whether you're going to be successful or not. Number of sales is depending upon your business model. You can go for a higher expensive, less number of volume, or more number of volume, lower expensive, and depends on the processes you want to go over with. But it all depends on making sure It's not just designed for you. And it's a pretty important element to make sure you know concretely whom you're designing for. The person or designs can be as microscopic as possible or as macroscopic also if you want to be, but making sure you already know who is in the crosshair to be the person using that design. Let me literally pause for a few seconds to see whether there are any other questions or concerns or anything else to add to at least those 3 points that we have on the table right now. Please, let's try to be a little bit more engaging. I would love a little bit more discussions rather than, in a way, going through a canned presentation. The next one is a case study, which might give you a little bit more food to challenge, and I would love to accept a couple of different point of views. Any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
Maybe like how can you remove your own bias when designing, when creating solutions?
Absolutely. Confirmation bias is what we are all born with as humans, and I think we'll try to make sure we address that, and that all comes back into investing into proper design research, making sure we understand the end user rather than putting your own elements over there, doing proper qualitative and quantitative on-site observations, and making sure you do not go with pre-made assumptions. And the most important part is when we, let's say, try to put a timeline for how we are going to do the project, the entire element is after a design research scenario, making sure put some time over there, because if you are not adding a free time or maybe a few weeks or few months of time over there, you are not believing that you are going to uncover any aha moments like, dang, that's how people are going to use it. Because the use part is pretty interesting. We all must have heard about the use case scenario, use analysis. We are designed for the jobs to be done really good, but also comes down to the misuse analysis too. Most people will try to misuse things if they are not properly designed, right? And it's a byproduct of who we are. Just as we have the confirmation bias, we means humans too, but the end user community, we have to understand not only but we have to take care of their own filter of what they're answering. So, any chance you happen to be a designer or you are being into those elements of a survey or asking questions, anybody, including me also, I will be thinking about one thing. I will be feeling in a completely different way. I will be answering it on the survey in a completely different way. I will be actually doing a completely different way. And it always happens. So we have to be ready for not just ours, but understanding how we're going to get data and in a very good way, not to pollute it, but to clean it up also. People, when you go with just surveys, it's pretty amazing. People try to answer always in the future. We were doing work for an health lose your weight kind of an, I would say, domain, and you ask anybody, people will be answering always in like the ideal, even me too, like yeah, I'm going to be really running 15 miles per week next week. It will always be in those areas. We have to understand how we take care of those other elements too. That's pretty good. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
What are the emotions you're trying to elicit?
What are the emotions you're trying to listen? That's, I should put that question on the wall. So emotions, we are always talking about the good emotions, means we all know in a way humans are caring and compassionate and curious and imaginative. There'll always be those emotions, but we also have to make sure we understand what are the emotions in the pain category, not just the pleasure category. So we try to be a little bit more, I would say, observant on what are the fear of people, what are the agonies of people, what are the frustrations of people, what are the aggravations, why is anger there, what is helplessness over there. So trying not to be always in the goody good world. If the client is with you and trying to show them like, hey, we are going to design research because we are going to get some evidence over there, we have to make sure we listen for both, I would say, elements over there. We will not go with a list of preemptive emotions to listen for, but we will try to just see what happens over there. And it all depends on the, I would say, the good magic of the design moderator or design researcher moderator in how she or he are going to elicit questions out from you. It will always be an open-ended question which will charter into the world of their actual usage rather than getting the first canned answer. That's always a beautiful question. So the best way is to explain something with a real case study, and then we can try to go and try to come up back to the 34,000 feet level to understand if we can have any top 10 takeaways for that matter. So we worked for Harman Kardon. I'm taking, so we final output was this, literally. The speaker earlier or still are literally black boxes, right? Means 10, 15 years ago, it was what you hear, right? In a way, the boxes were always hidden. You sometimes don't even need to show that, and you sometimes paint over it too. So Harman Kardon is an, how many of you know Harman Kardon brand? Good. So it's in the entire speaker, let's say, categories. The positioning also is pretty important. The JBL would be a, I would say, and more starter. I would say everyday brand. Harman Kardon is a little bit more luxuriously placed, a little bit more expensive, a little bit more for the discernible audiophile person. And then there are pro brands, AKG, Bowers and Wilkins also. So this was already positioned over there. We are not going to think about changing the branding position, but we want to make sure the product responds to the changes in the generation, right? The audio quality will be the same, and the products can be the same. People say, why do products become absolute? That is because the generational meanings, the generational elements of where people are going to put their values are always changing. It might be changing more faster in these days. Earlier we were trying to always go with a decade kind of an, I would say, slice. Now it is more faster. So how to make sure we bring back to this life? So beforehand, the citation kind of a marquee that sits under the Harman Kardon brand, it was literally designed for the people who loved to listen. They understood all the low bass, all the high tweeter, everything pretty discreetly. But eventually we want to make sure it should be pretty easy. Like when you say about product design, it's not just about beauty. Beauty is a pretty big part of what anybody would be doing, but it starts with usefulness and usability and ergonomics, and then it comes to the slice of the beauty. But how to make sure it's literally being designed for the user who might have the same hearing power, I would say, power as, but not actually understanding how to take care of that. So maybe on the left, you might see it's still box speakers at that time, wires, and you have to know what you are doing. You have to see what we and Jason and people were doing over here just to make things happen. How that out of the box experience, still the actual life experience can be seamless and can be emotional pleasing, right? It's all peace of mind, which will be a pretty good emotional virtue that would have been identified. So we are trying to go from there, and eventually we have to reach over here, very simple out of the box experiences. But just like any other product, a good product cannot, I would say, stand in isolation. It will always be in the ecosystem. So we have to always start to step back a little and see what happens in that ecosystem. Fortunately, our ecosystem here a little bit is more inspired by the home and the furnishing industry. So we have to make sure what's happening over there in that particular world. And we typically make sure, just as other people might be benchmarking this industry we are in, we also make sure as a studio benchmark the happenings in other industry too. What is the newer elements happening over there? Appreciation of materials, appreciation of different styles. What are the different themes going on forward? We have to make sure we do that. Yes, Mr. Jason.
So I have a question in regards to the emotional aspect of benchmarking other brands. When you're doing your own research, do you find that there's parallels and similarities with what you see in the marketplace as an answer or to a solution? Or what is the process by which your emotional aspect of data collecting differs from your competitors?
That's a beautiful question, as expected. So we do not do syndicated research. So we do not just approach to an element and just try to do something and sell it. We typically will always be doing for a specific client. So research again should not be again open-ended. You cannot just go and say like, hey, what do you think? We'll always try to go and set our hypothesis. So no matter I'm trying to showcase a good comprehensive process, there's a lot of elements you do before you go out and start your research. You have your hypothesis, you try to make sure you have your point of views, which can be completely shattered down, but we go again in the market with your views. So typically, we will make sure we will do that with the category that we're going to be working with. So if this was a complete different product, maybe in the world of mobility, we would not be in the appreciation of materials or timelessness. It will be in a different world. Competition is, there can be different ways to look at it. Sometimes an OEM, the companies we work for, might just buy syndicated data, and then they have to filter through what might be applicable for them. But over here, we try to make sure we work with that category. Because on the other side, what we do as a studio means there's a reason why OEMs or startups eventually seek out experts, not unlike us, to do what they are because we typically cross-pollinate between categories. So that will be one of the categories. And then on the other side, when we do our own internal critiques, we have to make sure we compare and contrast what we observed in different categories, which eventually brings on the similarities and the differences of what people might be thinking of that in their context. Because that really exposes an amazing, I would say, an element in the entire design world. Even if it is the same person, let's say Jason, 10 years ago, your values or meanings would be different for certain categories, and today they would evolve. They have to evolve. That's who you are. That's what the emotional growth happens. But the other part is at the same time, Gabby here loves photography. That was Gabby photography, right? But even at the same time, she might go to the ends of earth to find the best series, the best lens, the best umbrellas, the best locations to take her photos. She will not look, hopefully, at the price. She will look at always the worth of it, not the cost of it. It's always different when you look at any product. The cost and the worth is completely different. But at the same time, Gabby, I'm going to put you on pedestal. She might hate lawn mowing. She will go to Lowe's and buy the cheapest lawn mower and just make it happen. So at the same time, the same person will have complete different attributes and expectations from one category when you go to the other category. And that's one of the biggest problem in the industry. Like, hey, look at there is a Gen Z. She loves some neon-shaped color shoes. Let's try to paint her vehicle neon colored. It doesn't translate completely. So you have to really understand how we are looking at that persona in your category in the behavioral situation. Since you have triggered that amazing piece of thought and we talked about behavior, one amazing element of behavior is, no, let's say every person is, let's say, mature over here. Not that I'm going to talk something that's cannot be heard by an immature person, but we all think, literally till now, that we function on what we believe on the principles that come from within. That's hopefully absolutely true. But actually in the 1960s, Professor Stanley Milgram from Yale did amazing experiments about behavior. No matter what, apart from your principles from within, you will always react to the context you are in. The situation defines how you will act, how you will feel, how you will behave. There will always be a blend of those two elements. So it all depends on, again coming back to the question, how you are going to go and do your design research, because based on that, you are going to add all the attributes for the product inside it. Good. And just like this, raise your hand anytime, and we can try to solve or stop. This can stop anytime, but we'll try to make sure we address questions appropriately. Gabby's friend, what's your name?
Danielle. So a lot of times with product design, if you make something more beautiful, it'll cost more. So I'm curious how you balance designing a product that may elicit the emotion that, wow, I love this because of the design of it, but also not, wow, this is too expensive for me.
Daniel? No? Yeah. So I'm sorry. I would really like to beg to differ on that. Let's say, let's start with the example rather than directly coming and beating you up. Let's say you see a nice Corvette over here, and you see a Prius over here. You want to design the hood of this Corvette, you want to design the hood of this Prius. The stamping machine absolutely doesn't care which is beautiful, which is ugly. These are our constructs. If it is beautiful, it has to cost more. It's absolutely not true. Now, then comes the element of brand play, of making sure how you place it appropriately. So if you want to have a Corvette, you pay for more, but from the production size, from the manufacturing size, from actually doing what you're doing, is cost exactly the same.
But what if you're adding like an extra decorating process or a special resin that costs more to manufacture? It's more complex tooling.
Yeah, so absolutely. So that example helps in actually ascertaining the major cost of any product. But you want to go and add different layers of CMF, color, materials, and finishes. Yeah, it might be expensive because of being a completely newer finish in the market, because of maybe the first 7 years or 14 years of being under some contract with some supplier, which can only do that. From the feasibility side, it's exactly the same. Now we want to add a little bit, let's say, more complexity, more refinement, more details over there. There will be a incremental amount over there. That will be always put it more than that, but it doesn't have to be twice or thrice. We can eventually talk with a specific product if you have in mind, but it all depends on sometimes how you look at it. Again, I talked about volume. If the volumes are less, yeah, it will be a huge margin difference. If the volumes are more, you can work it out still how you want to do. So right now, I'm in this product design. So we typically design for the masses. So this is more for a mass consumption community rather than 1:1. So in that area, it all depends on the volume and how much is your addressable market. Global, local, it all depends on that. But if any supplier is giving you trouble in saying this has to cost more, they are trying to put in a different position. When I say position, means luxury or everyday or means a pro, but most of the time it would not be. Again, don't. My answers doesn't can or cannot apply to the specific element. It should be taken with a taste of with a grain of salt. If you're talking about, let's say, apparel and you're trying to work with different elements out over there, it might need to have a newer treatment on that. Yeah, there will be incremental size, but coming back to the main element, just because it is beautiful should not mean it is expensive. Most of the, I would say, categories that is applicable. Great question. If you're a designer and if you're fighting with engineers in-house or your suppliers, you can always make sure you can let them know that it's going to be marginal, nothing more. Yes, Mr. Jason. Oh, yes.
But then also, so creating an emotional bond with CMF, right? Is that a catalyst in a way for creating an emotional bond?
Absolutely, yes. So it all depends on eventually what your aspirations are, right? Means we are all talking about design here, but design cannot just be, I'm saying it as a designer, cannot just be purposeful or just be meaningful or just be emotionally clever or just be elegant. They have to be that, but it has to be aligned also with the success of your business elements. So it's typically a three-legged stool. You must have seen this Venn diagram everywhere. First is design for desirability. That's where it will start with. It has to triangulate with the design for the feasibility. No matter what, even in the world of software and physical products, they have to follow the laws of physics. And the third part is design for viability. The business has to make money. Means, yeah, unless you're funded by a deep pocket charity or somebody else, like just keep on doing what you want to do, which is extremely rare. I have not met any one person who is not, I would say, worried about cost. We have to make sure the business happens. So then all those three depend to see how we want to position the brand. If it's going to be positioned over there, it's expensive for a different reason. If you're talking about a Cadillac front clip versus a Sonic front clip, obviously that front clip of Cadillac has more components to start with because it has to elude that kind of an element over there. So there is a reason for the brand positioning and then trying to make sure you are getting the worth of it. Beautiful. Little bit beautiful. Anything more? Yes, sir.
So as business owners, we all want to assume our product or our client base is as broad as possible. But if you target your message to as broad as possible, then it's going to lose some of its authenticity, it'll lose some of its novelty. And the more targeted your message is, the higher emotion. So how do you balance a specific message with a broad base? And how do you determine what's going to be best for your company?
That's interesting. What's your name again?
Rick.
Rick. Awesome. So this should come later in the slide, but where we stand, I stand, or let's say my team stands, we embrace polarization. So we literally we literally say opposite of what you might be saying. Stop being all things to all people. Start by being something to someone. And that is very difficult. That doesn't mean do only one product. That means do a portfolio of products. But out of this one is designed 100% for that cross-section of the persona, and they are going to love it. Polarization means either you love a product or you hate a product. And you have to start embracing that dichotomy. Because coming back to what you might be saying is, if you want to try to please every person, and whomever you are going to work with from now on to the end, a salesperson are the most difficult person because they don't want to say no to any different sale. They will say, like, one person here in Idaho wants this, can't you make it happen? it's just software, just do something. Like, no, we are not going to try to make sure we should be a commodity because eventually commodity will not rule that much of an plasticity of income. So coming back to be focused in what you are, trying to make sure you carve out your niche, make sure your business model supports that. It doesn't have to be a niche of only 50 people or 500 people. The niche can be completely, I would say, dispersed over the world, but you know we are going to build something specifically for them. They're going to follow you. Hardly there might be any top 500 brands where they will want to really try to be as global as they want. They will try to be as focused as they can be. There might be some attributes where you might think like, yeah, Apple earpods look like they are designed for everybody. So there might be completely, I would say, exceptions to the elements that I'm saying. But coming down to if you're doing something, the best proposition, the best I should not say 100%, the best likelihood of success will be making sure you know your constituency, you know what they exactly like and love, and you're going to design that for them. In any design, you are wireframing or even physical products or emotional products, there'll always be compromises. Always be. It's a part of designers. It's a part of the design theme. You cannot start doing the best product for everybody for all the life. Because if you ask an end user, what do you want or what do you want, she will always say, I want all the features, all for free. That's a given. I won't want that. We cannot do that. So we have to start making sure like, hey, we'll compromise over here, we'll compromise over here. And the compromises might happen in a completely different category. We are designing for a vehicle, right? Means, let's say you love Ford GT. You sit in the vehicle, it's an amazing vehicle, headrest design, part of safety. But if you want to see in your rear view mirror, the headrest design would be a big one or a small one. You're always going to compromise the rear view mirror angle with the safety. It goes with everything, anywhere. You can term anything in a chair design or a podium design. There'll always be compromises. Let's make sure we compromise not on the areas which are the passion points of your persona. And once you understand that, like, hey, we are going to do this, this, and this, you look at any, people always say Apple or Harman Kardon or Jeep, these are amazing brands because in the top 10 passionate elements, they will not compromise. They will still compromise on a lot, but it will be in the other elements which will not be on the attributes of what makes that brand the brand you want to seek out for. And that comes on to the main area of how do you make sure, how do you plan the attributes of your brand? Great question, Rick. Yes, ma'am.
It's kind of a piggyback on his question, but what if the same...
He's a strong man. He can carry you. Yeah.
What if the same product, it's the same service, right? But for an individual, and what would call for that individual to want that service is very different than what an organization would want.
Absolutely.
The same service can serve both. So does that confuse, is that like brand confusion if you're not trying to include all of it, but you need to speak to those two different audiences with the same, how do you branch that?
So in a normal world, it will be called as late stage customization. So I'm not saying we have to start ground up for one product for one person or other person. No, absolutely not. You will still use 70-80% of similar tools or physical products to make sure you got your kernel, your engine ready. And then the late stage customization will happen in making sure it is designed for just a, let's say, if you're doing an life insurance, wealth management app, it will be different for this billionaire over here versus different for this everyday person over here. It can always, that's how you start to making money. That's what I said, it will be a portfolio of products under that brand. So, and then everyone will stand for something. This is designed especially for a school going or an educator, I would say, community, and they would want these and things because we understand that. We are not fabricating that persona. We went on, did our research, and we'll put it over there. So once you bring your main idea to a decent minimum, not viable product, but minimum viable experiential level, then you can start doing all those changes. So when they hear or listen to what you stand for, they will get that message. And I'm not saying just doing it from the marketing side. We have to make sure we do it from authentically the product side also. Because one case will always happen. It's easy to design a product that sells rather than just keep on selling the product you have. It's a completely different way to look at things. And that will be the way we will try to do things in that area. It's beautiful, beautiful. I'm good. I'm not getting on any further, but We can complete a few slides. We can come back again because this is more fun. So we want to make sure we get properly inspired. Inspiration is not copy. Inspiration is really understanding what's happening in that world. Can we use something from over there? Okay, that's a new surface coating we saw on a different material over there. Can we use in our world? Can we build some bonds between them and us? We want to make sure we actually go and do on-site design research. So earlier in the process, we made sure, or we had in our crosshair, we will go and use a Scandinavian design input for our citation speakers, predominantly designed for the European nation, and then we are bringing it back here to the US. That's what the business unit wanted. We want to make sure we understand their needs too. The end user is just one user. We want to make sure we are understanding what the business unit or the client is going to ask for. So meeting people, 5 different cities, 3 different focus groups, 3 different houses in a single day, making sure we go and look at the real context. Do not fabricate the context or ecosystem also, trying to see what's happening over there. This is not new now, it's already in the market, but we saw there's a huge kind of an implications of how the home textiles are used. So we made sure we looked at that. Make sure you compare and contrast what's happening in other progressive companies. The best products do not compete in their own category. They compete beyond the category. It will always happen so. And that's why to make sure if you, from your designer perspective or the OEM perspective, what your benchmarks are, we will make sure we will go with those, understand how they are trying to project their future based on what we can do in the, I would say, in the public world. Make sure that we always, competitive analysis of the products we are doing to take them, buy them, use them, misuse them, throw them, dissect them, and then you come back to the brand world. So till this last slide, understanding what's happening right now in the market world, then we'll come back into the actual, I would say, the brand world. You had your hand up, Mr. Jason.
There's a couple things. One is we have to start to wind down.
Oh, it's time already? Okay.
Also, can you give an example?
10 more minutes.
Pragmatically, what does it look like to design something outside of your category that you just referenced?
Say it again, design outside the category?
Well, I understood you to say, like, when you're designing something, it's not just within a certain category or segment, you're kind of designing beyond that. So what is an example of what that looks like?
Maybe it was miscommunicated. When I say we are still going to design the category, we have to go make sure that we go and see the tentacles of that category reaching out to the other categories inside that brand. If you're designing, maybe an example would be designing, let's say, a toaster in your kitchen. I cannot just be in my studio and just design a toaster. You have to make sure the toaster eventually works on the premises of any evolving kitchen. It can be as simple as designing an Tupperware box. Okay, Tupperware box, how is it going to be stored in the shelves? Let's go and see what the shelving people are doing. Oh, it's going to be washed in the dishwasher. Let's go and see what a Bosch dishwasher is doing. Oh, it's going to be washed with this Tide detergent. Let's try to see how it's going to be washed by that. Oh, how it's going to be used as a tiffin box by a kid. So we are still going across the categories to understand how are they going to be used or misused, but bringing the insights back to our own category to finally design that toaster or the Tupperware box or on any gadget you want. That's pretty interesting. Okay, let's try to at least complete this case study in next 9 minutes. So for this product, we knew what our brand was. So we had already gone to the entire elements of designing the brand attributes for Harman Kardon. We also did that, not just the product design, but understanding what it stands for, how it has to go. So we knew all those elements over there. But coming back to the product, the marquee, the citation is a marquee inside the Harman Kardon brand. We have to make sure that we bring on a certain design DNA. That's what we try to make sure we put as our, let's say, benchmark. To go and reach at the end of our exercise. We cannot just, so contrary to the popular belief, designers typically are not a I would say, of just inspiration. We just really don't just get up in the morning and just start designing and, yeah, that looks good, let's do it. No, there will be a rhyme and notion. We want to align somewhere because that's how we want the brand to be perceived. As I said, making sure we curate the emotional response. So we want to make sure we do that. More coming out from the design research, we make sure, okay, these are the cues that people are trying to look out for in their other worlds. How to make sure we hone on to them. I'm sorry for this extremely small, anyway, you understand what's happening here. So we make sure that we literally write it down as a scorecard, as literally a tick mark kind of a box. These are the elements we want to make sure we have them in our product, our branded product. And only after that, we have to make sure we let loose our, let's say, designerly way on that product. Then eventually it's a moment of Cambrian explosion, right? We try to go and make sure we have the diversification of ideas, but still maintaining to make sure we want to reach there. You give designer a task, he or she will keep on designing till the cows come home. You have to still make sure we do it in a boundary. Boundaries are good for designers. They actually make sure we focus. Just as we say the brand has to be focused, our product designer also have to be focused. So we make sure we start only after we understand that. No matter what, we work with the engineering community to see, okay, what are the hard points that we cannot change? It might be the software limitations, the limitations on your hardware, or the limitations of the machines who are going to finally make it. We have to make sure whatever we want to design is not just a pie in the sky. We are not just going to give an amazing sketch and sell it for millions. No, Pablo can do that. Not a good design studio who want to make sure the product has to reach the world. So we make sure it's always working with the engineers hand in hand. And then, no matter what, making it happen, making it physical. No matter we have literally almost all the sophisticated tools, software tools in our box to do in the 3D world or metaverse or virtual world, nothing changes to get your hands dirty, or cardboard, or foam core, or literally anything you can find at that time. Start role playing, start experimenting, start actually conjuring things over here and say, okay, now let's do it. It literally takes the element of understanding how it's going to be consumed in the real world. So we do that. Fabrics was a pretty big part of how we wanted to pivot and try to bring something unique and different in that emerging world. So we made sure we looked onto that a lot. Pretty soon we understood that we cannot go and invent a fabric. We have to go and find one of the best fabric supplier in the world. And we did. We went to, I don't know how to still pronounce that. If anybody is here from the Scandinavian world, you can. Cavdrat, really the epitome of what we can do in the fabric world. They are literally known for sustainability, comfortableness, resistance to the dust, resistance to plenty of other things, easy on maintenance, serviceability. We have to still make sure it's acoustically transparent. There are so many layers to make sure you do that. So our designers sat with them to make sure we design the fabric that will be best for our purpose rather than just being and covering on the sofa. So you have to really work out with your partners to see what can be done. And in a way, coming back to what Daniel was saying about cost or beauty, we finally got a pretty beautiful fabric for our designers, but it was just one more SKU that they added to their line. So you have to still make sure that, hey, you're still using the same tools, but we want it this particular way. It's like creating a color out of other colors. So you have to still make sure that you earn the trust of the supplier too. So we did that. We understood what we want. And again, no matter what, the low fidelity modeling, that very fast modeling, not just prototype, but pre-totypes, we make sure we call them, to make sure whatever you are doing should not be hidden on the screen, bring it out, let's get everybody's work together and try to see how it starts building. We should always be proud to share the work in progress rather than try to make this final rendering and show it to your boss or the client. You have to make sure the participatory design goes a long way. For every review, critic, it's never internal or external. Our clients are always with us through the entire process because we do not want to do something that eventually fail or not be the ones that we want to. And then we make sure that we understand what we want from the supplier. We make sure all those things are done, always making sure engineering alignment is always done. The details, one of the main thing about this brand for luxury placement was the details and how to do that and how to make sure we design for that. Coming back to the UI UX, I think she talked a little bit of UI UX in the last speech also, making sure how it has to be so friendly, so intuitive, so immersive, so engaging that it has to eventually be invisible. So on the product, we also designed the entire UI UX for what needs to be there for the digital interface, what happens behind the other surface of glass. And the last part also what we did when it was coming out, the speech element now, which is everywhere, was coming up to date. So we made sure we worked with proper partners over there to bring in the Hey Google Assistant. It's just, I have a speaker at my home. It's just amazing and works like a charm. So we can, if you are near, you can still use physical tools. If you want to have your interface on your app, you can use the apps. Or If you want to use your voice, which nowadays is really amazing for any intonations, any accents, any change of elements, and it literally helps you understand your world. We talked about CMF a little bit, so yeah, so we did not go to the end of the world. We still had our own elements of what we want to do, but depends on how you want to buy it. Everybody's, let's say, price the same. Some people might put a different price depending on what's selling fast. So they'll create some hold on e-com sites, but from inside the view, it's always the same. So those were the elements over there, and that's how we finally come out with the entire system. 1 minute more. It's not done till we make sure we go back to the scorecard that I mentioned to see like whatever we want to achieve, is it done or not? It's not just the sales, right? We're talking about a pretty brand and making sure the brand sells, not the product. We have to make sure all the attributes that we so amazingly extracted from our design research activities are completely answered. So we make sure we are on the theme, we are on the brand, we are in that exact positioning we want to do. And literally line by line, we want to make sure about the profiles, about the shapes, about the minimalistic elements. Whatever we had talked about is finally embedded in the product. So all the 9 ones that we had embedded over there, simple things like floating form, it all comes down what was observed in the other world. Branded elements, minimal shapes, sensors, intuitive interface. It might sound simple, but making sure all to combine them into one kind of a family is sufficiently charging. And then eventually it comes back to how you make sure the branding team takes care of it. You properly get them, put the contrast or put the context, photograph them without humans. Eventually make sure you do with the humans. And then at the end, we literally try to make sure that's not my living room, but we make sure it goes into the ideality of what the end user wants or got to have products which is easy to use out of the box, no wires, simple, and still the extreme quality over there. So I think we can come back to the end. If there are any small 1 or 2 more questions, we can try to answer that. I will always be available in the back after the session too. Second last question.
This might be quick, but do you believe in focus groups?
I absolutely believe in focus groups. I know Steve Jobs doesn't believe in focus groups, but there is a different story behind that. There are different ways you can use it. If you're just going there to just get the rating high, so you can show it to your marketing team that, hey, look, it's in the top boxes of love and hate relationship. There's a different means for that. But if you really go, as I said earlier when Jason was over here, we do not just go into research. We go with our hypothesis. So we want to make sure we not only ask them open-ended questions like, hey, what's the future of kitchen? And what's the future of your patio experience? Not everybody might be equipped to answer that. But then you make sure you sensitize them with few concepts. It might be physical, or AR is so easy nowadays to do it, or just renderings. And then you extract information to see how they are shooting it down. Those hypotheses are never a part of ideation. Those are there designed to extract response. So it is really essential. That's what we all believe. One more question, and then he's going to snatch the microphone from my hand.
Well, I do have a question, if that's all right.
Yes, I can repeat it.
My understanding was that you were kind enough to offer each and every participant one of those speakers. So let's just give him a round of applause, you guys. That's pretty awesome.
Look under your chair.
Right. So, but thank you all. There's another amazing event and session that's right now starting, and so please feel free to stay here. They know that we're transitioning a little bit late, so there's no pressure or rushing, and just make note of the tip jar when you leave. Thank you.